What up, guys? James from Bolt Bros here. Victory Monday once again, guys, for the Chargers 2-0. Got the nice dub over the Carolina Panthers. And let's talk about just some of the post-game interviews and such, too, and just kind of give you a little bit of an idea of what that Steelers game is going to be for Week 3. So small preview and a quick recap of what came from that Panthers game. So once again, guys, James from Bolt Bros. Let's go. Bolt Bros. All right, guys. Once again, appreciate all the love and support here, guys. Like this video, subscribe to this channel if you've not, and we'd love to be able to hear from you in the comments below. So, man, vibes are high right now with the Chargers. 2-0, first time since 2012. So you got to love to see that. Jim Harbaugh has come in and absolutely just changed this team. The worm has turned is what he says. Such an odd saying, but hey, it has changed, right? This team has really bought into what Jim Harbaugh has brought into. Shout out to Joe Ortiz, too, who I believe him got a game ball in this game, too. I think that's the second one in 2 weeks in a row, I believe. So he's got a little bit of a win streak here at this point. But, it was also JK. It was also Quentin Johnston, Elijah Molden. There was a lot of guys that got very involved, and I think all got game balls, too. So great to be able to see, guys. I mean, what's amazing about this team is how quickly this team has turned as the Jim Harbaugh vision for them very quickly. And it's great to see. Like, once again, this game against Carolina Panthers is one of those games in the past that always tend to be some weird trap game for us. We find ways to make it very interesting when we shouldn't have made it interesting at all. We're playing our game, and we're finding ways to dominate teams. And that's a beautiful thing to be able to see. And it's great to be able to see this team really buying into this whole philosophy here. So vibes are high. Team is out and still in Charlotte. They're going to be out there all week working out, practicing and such too. Great to be able to see that and them getting ready for the Steelers game this weekend. So awesome. Little tidbit here that I just want to throw out for you. Man, JK Dobbins, what an absolute stud as a wide receiver as a running back for us. The thing about JK, man, he's just a real stout built guy, but a guy that is an absolute elite running back. He's just had some mishaps and issues with injuries in the past. Guy's healthy. Guy's an elite runner. And we're seeing it in the first 2 games. He is the first Charger since LaDainian Tomlinson, 2007, with 130 plus rush yards in consecutive games. First time. He's actually the first running back since Arian Foster, I think it is, from the Texans for his first 2 games to be able to have 100-yard rushing games. It's been a long time since the NFL has seen this before. The league has shifted so much to more of a passing league that now with Greg Roman, obviously, he's a little bit of an older school philosophy, but just a physical guy that loves the run game and pound and ground basically the ball. JK Dobbins is doing a great job of it right now. And he is honestly the hot hand at this point. And it's exciting to see this. And it's exciting to be able to see, that run that he had to the sideline with the backflip at the end for the touchdown, to be able to finish runs. I mean, that was one of his things that he wanted to be able to figure out, because last week he couldn't have finished the runs. He was a little slower. This week he was able to finish the runs with a backflip, which, yikes, watch out for the back, man. That looked kind of like a hard fall to the back. But the same side, great to be able to see what JK Dobbins does and is continuously doing. So we got to keep that going into Week 3. Now, also, I'll shout out to Gus Edwards. Gus Edwards is not having a bad time, too. I mean, he's still out there rushing the ball. He's not getting these giant runs that JK Dobbins is having right now, but he's basically a good role player to this whole idea of what this offense is. That you basically got your thunder and you got your lightning. The lightning being JK Dobbins, thunder being Gus Edwards. And his role has been very, very good so far. I think his vision needs to change just a little bit, because I think he's a little off on what he's seeing in the O-lines. But I think at some point he'll get his legs under him and he'll be able to see the field a little bit better, and the game will slow down a little bit more for him. But once again, a lot of these guys didn't play in the preseason, so they're fresh legs at this point. And it's all kind of new for them at this point. So great to be able to see this run game going. We have over 200 plus yards for this game on the ground. Let's go. Let's keep it going. First time we've seen that in a long time, guys. I mean, we haven't had a 1,000-yard rusher since Melvin Gordon, I think 2017 year, I believe it is. So it's been a long time that we've seen a ground game actually working for us. So great job, JK. Keep it going, my man. And, going on to the next slide here too, this just shout out to the defense. Defense did their job. I honestly thought they were going to do a shutout for this one, but this is an awesome stat here. It's Chargers defense allowed the opposing offense just to run one play in the red zone for the second straight game. Jesse Minter cooking, bro. Like, it's amazing to be able to see this. Dayon Henley, I think he even got a game ball this week too. Dayon was cooking too. He had like 3 tackles for a loss, tip passes, all these different things like tackles. He was all over the field, looking great. And I love Dayon, man. He was awesome to be able to be a guest on this podcast too some time ago. And man, dude is just an absolute awesome player. And you got to love for him and root for him constantly. But this defense as a whole has been phenomenal for us. One play in the red zone for the second straight game. Dude, this team is something else. I mean, you understand what that means. They're going to only be field goal position at that point. We score a couple touchdowns, we could put a game out of reach for them. Bottom line, if we keep that up, that's amazing. I mean, and on top of that, we're one of the top, actually the top defenses in the league in points allowed on the defense. So it's great to be able to see what we're doing, guys. And, just to give an idea too, Chargers beat the Raiders last week, right? Raiders just beat the Ravens on the road. It's not like we didn't play a good team, right? I mean, I'm not trying to give a shout out. Once again, it's family, trust, and respect all day, every day here, guys. But they are a good team, and we played a good Raiders team, and we found a way to shut them down. That's awesome. Panthers, I thought we were going to win this one regardless pretty soundly, and we did. But I didn't feel like it was much threat. But at the same side, we still handled all our business. Once again, we're playing our game. We're not allowing these teams that you should just kind of just run all over and just go out there and make it a little bit interesting like what we've done in the past. We're finding ways to just straight up beat teams. Love it. Got to love to see it, guys. This defense is awesome to watch. Now, Alex Insdorf from the Guilty as Charged, love his posts about his PFF rankings for these teams. I mean, look, 4 out of the top 5 are O-linemen. Joe Alt, 87.2. Zion, 85.8. Rashawn Slater, 82.7. Trey Pipkins, 79.3. And Quentin Johnston was the only other guy because he's got a couple touchdowns, a couple catches and everything, 79 or 74.9. This is a Jim Harbaugh era, right? Build at the lines. We drafted Joe Alt as a weapon. We didn't go Malik Neighbors because we felt Joe Alt was a weapon. Go back to Bobby Ross. His philosophy is you win and lose games at the line. I feel like we've got a really good D-line right now. Poona Ford is playing out of his mind. I think we got obviously some of the best edge room in the league at this point. We got a really good situation, guys, and it's only going to get better from this point on. The big thing is, though, they wanted to build the O-line and make this O-line work. Great to see that. You don't got an O-line, weapons around you don't matter. Look at it with the Bears right now. Their inside O-line is not good. They gave up 7 sacks. It doesn't matter how many weapons you got around you. At this point, if you don't have an O-line that protects the quarterback to allow the ball to get to those weapons, you got nothing at this point. And so Jim Harbaugh, Joe Ortiz has done a phenomenal job of making sure that this team is built from the lines and works its way out from there. We all know Justin Herbert's a stud. We know that he could go out there and ball. But once again, he can only ball if he has a good O-line, right? So great to be able to see, guys. Love it. Love it. Love it. Now, Justin Herbert, he did on his post game, just talked about just kind of how this run game is and how different it is for him. I mean, at the same side, I think Justin Herbert internally is saying, hey, look, it doesn't matter to me. As long as we find a way to win, who cares at this point? Now, JK Dobbins is absolutely stud at this point. These first 2 games have been phenomenal for us, and it's an absolute weapon for us to be able to have JK Dobbins. Justin Herbert knows that he's going to go out there and be able to get his throws when he needs to. I don't think it really matters too much to Justin Herbert at this point. I think that he's fine with this. I think he's fine with a run game to support him. This is the first time he's actually had a run game supporting him. I mean, what was the last time that we really had a run game, or at least over a 200-yard rush game, which is not a very common thing in the NFL, obviously. It was against the Dolphins week 1 of last year. We might have a very, very big situation here where 300-plus total offensive yards are also going to be a majority through the run game. And we might see a lot of these kind of 150-yard type throwing games with Justin Herbert, which J.J. McCarthy had that a lot at Michigan, and still they won a lot, right? They had an undefeated season last year and went to a national championship and won it. So this is a different Justin Herbert, and it's going to be interesting to see. Like even on our post game live, we kind of talked a little bit about that. Is that going to kind of frustrate, Justin Herbert a bit too? Who knows? At this point, I think any NFL player just wants to win, right? Who cares how we win? Let's just go out and win. And Justin Herbert is an absolute stud, and we know he can make those throws. But at the same side, he might not be a guy that you need to have him throw 40 more times in a game. Maybe he only needs to make a couple clutch throws every now and then. I'm excited to be able to see where Justin Herbert's going. And still at the same side, he still had 2 touchdowns, did have 2 turnovers. I will talk about those turnovers because, once again, the O-line is so good for Justin Herbert at this point that I think he's a little comfortable. Like, for instance, when he had the fumble, that pocket was great. And I think he needs to get a little bit more of an internal clock once again in his mind that he's got 3 seconds at most, make a decision and go for it. And I think that's where we're kind of going, as he had a couple weeks away from training camp, didn't have anything in the preseason. That clock is kind of moving a little bit more in his head, that he's just kind of getting his legs once again in the game. So it's going to take a little time for him to kind of get that going, but I'm sure he's going to figure that out. Now with the interception he threw, he should have just ran the ball, got it whatever yards he could get, go out of bounds, continue from there. Don't necessarily need to throw it downfield at that point. Just get what you could get and move on, kind of thing. Pump fake a bit too wouldn't be a bad thing. Maybe kind of free up a little bit of the defenders and open up one of the wide receivers and look at that. They don't bite. Cool. Take your couple yards and move on, go to the next play, kind of thing. That's one thing that he will work on. Now, we know Justin Herbert's an absolute intelligent guy. He'll work through that. He'll get past that, and he'll play a much better, higher level football from this point on. So gotta love it. And now going to Jim Harbaugh in his post game, he talked a little bit more about JK Dobbins. I mean, obviously that's the man of the hour at this point. I mean, he is an absolute stud for this team. And, Jim Harbaugh talked a little bit about just how this team is playing like a team on all 3 levels. It's amazing to be able to see what this team has done and how quickly the worm has turned for this team. It's exciting to be able to see where it's going to go. We got a really good thing here. And once again, Jim Harbaugh, he is currently 2-0. He is an undefeated Chargers coach. Let's go. Gotta love it, man. But Jim Harbaugh has been an absolute phenomenal player. And I thought it was a funny thing about in his post game where he kind of talked about how JK did the backflip. Was he concerned about that? And he's like, well, I don't know, not necessarily, but at the same side, like, I've tried to do a backflip in my life and I've never been able to get a full rotation. So it's, I kind of envy what he's been able to do. So great to be able to see. Jim Harbaugh is an absolute stud. It's a guy that a lot of these players have really bought into very quickly, and having his philosophy embedded within this team and being competitors all around. Shout out to like Elijah Molden and a lot of the O-line and everything too. Even today in his press conference, he talked a little bit more about just how this team is playing as a team, how we are getting better as a team. And, they're going to be figuring everything out about injuries. So I know that there was a hammy issue with Colston. He did have some hammy issues, didn't come back in the game. Palmer, there was, I think, a hand issue with him. They'll find out a little bit more about that. And the Justin Herbert thing, we talked about that. Those x-rays were negative. So at this point, they'll know a little bit more. The injury report will come out on Wednesday. We'll kind of figure out where it goes from there. My thoughts of it is about the whole Justin Herbert thing in his foot. He's going to be fine. He came back into the game and he was totally fine and still ended up closing the game out. They did say at the post-game press conference he was kind of hobbling a little bit. I mean, if it's a plantar fascia situation still, that's kind of just massage it out, figure out how to ice it as much as you can, rest, ice, stretch it out. That's pretty much what you got to do at that point. If it's kind of just a small ankle tweak or whatnot, it'll be fine. High ankle sprain is kind of the one you need to be concerned about, but I don't really imagine at this point it's going to be much of an issue. So I fully expect Justin Herbert to be able to be out there for the game on Sunday versus the Steelers. Now, moving on to that, let's talk a little bit about that. This Steelers game is going to be an absolute tough game all around. Now, Arthur Smith is now the offensive coordinator for the Steelers. He's never really had a big passing, ranking as an OC or head coach. Never has been in the bottom 15 or has always been in the back end of the 15 of the rankings for passing game. And you can still see it. That's how it's going with Justin Fields. I mean, it's not a huge passing game situation. They are running the ball pretty well at this point. So And on top of that, their defense is playing pretty well. It's very similar type teams that we're going to be looking at here, guys. It's going to be a dog fight type game. We're very similar kind of coached in that sense. I think that, we're kind of almost a little bit of kind of like an idea of like what the Steelers are as an organization. Just an absolute high defense, run the ball, physical type game. It's going to be great. This game is going to be won and lost at the line. So this is going to be great. Their defense is obviously very good after 2 games. This is just the amount of points that were scored that the defense allowed. We are currently number 1 in the league at 6.5 points per game. That is phenomenal. But right behind them is the Steelers at 8 points per game. Now, I don't expect that by any means. I do feel like the Steelers have played a couple, opponents that aren't like the best of opponents, but at the same side, everybody's an NFL franchise, right? Everybody's a very, very good team all around. It's going to be a dogfight watching this game. Now, even to say, if you look at like the total yards per game, Chargers only giving up 227 yards per game to Steelers giving up 260 yards per game. We're very, very similar in a lot of ways, guys. There's not much difference between passing yards allowed to the rushing yards allowed to. It's going to be a tough game. So I'm excited to be able to see kind of the first test for the Chargers this weekend. But I would love to be able to hear your comments about week 2 win over the Panthers. Anything that I missed a little bit on that too. And also some of your thoughts about how to be able to beat the Steelers this weekend on Sunday. So once again, guys, James from Bolt Bros, please like this video, subscribe to this channel if you've not. Throw in some comments below. Love to be able to hear from you. And once again, James from Bolt Bros. Let's go.
Hey, what's up? Cameron Dick here watching Bolt Bros podcast.